We all know what social media is. I don't think it's necessary to go on some big explanation about it. We're all fully aware of what it is. If you're on the internet right now as we speak, chances are you have some form of it. You, your siblings, your parents, probably even your grandparents have some social media in some form. It's become an integral part of a ton of people's lives, for better or for worse, depending on who you ask. Even back in its old days, the ideas of interacting with others on a global scale was a big selling point for the internet. There were more primitive ways compared to what we have today. All these big social media websites didn't really exist until the mid to late 2000s, so before then, we had to improvise. The most well-known ways to interact other than email in the early 2000s was IRC and message boards. IRC was basically a more primitive version of Skype and, shit, Skype's outdated now too. A more primitive version of Discord. There we go. Things die out too damn fast, man. But then there was message boards and forums. Message boards and forums were an extremely popular form of social media back then, mostly to talk about niche topics with a bunch of different people. Think Reddit and subreddits, but with less smugness and jannies. Message boards and forums still exist today, but they're really only for the most diehard of enthusiasts to talk about their weird niche shit. Like fucking, I don't know, eating ice. There's actually a forum for eating ice enthusiasts. There really is a group for everything, isn't there? So I've given you all a brief explanation on social media back in the day. So now, let's talk about something completely different. Who remembers Buffy the Vampire Slayer? Buffy the Vampire Slayer was a huge show back in the late 90s and early 2000s, and it is a time capsule. The series reeks of all the cliches and tropes that were popular back then.
Which was the style at the time.
It grew a huge fan base with tons of diehard fans. Me personally, I remember catching a few episodes here and there, wasn't that into it, but I can definitely see why it got a huge fan base. I do have the Xbox game based on it, and it's actually pretty damn good, I was shocked to find out. So because Buffy had a huge following, it of course got a bunch of fan websites and message boards dedicated to it. A number of these exist, and they're all pretty much what you would expect. But one of these is very special. One of these has quite the interesting story behind it, and that's what I'm going to be focusing on today. The website I'm talking about is called The Bloody Boards. The Bloody Boards was created by a woman from Australia who was extremely obsessed with the character Spike from the show and his actor, James Marsters, even going so far as to name her own account after him. Did I forget to mention that Buffy had a huge fan base of women too? Well, looking at this guy, I can only imagine why. God, imagine how much bean salad was made over this dude. Ooh, he's a bad boy. He looks like the love child of Draco Malfoy and Skeletor. Anyway, the creator of the website was a huge Buffy fan and of Spike. That's why she created this website in 2004. But it should be known, the Bloody Boards no longer exist. There is a reason for that, and I'll get to why in a minute. So most of what I'm talking about is of secondhand events. So the forum's your typical fan forum, talking about the show and the cast, announcements for cast meetups and all that, and a huge fixation on James Marsden. The last recorded number of users for the website was 125, so it's a small but probably active community. However, there is something off about this website. Something incredibly strange. And you can see why that is by just looking to your right. Every single post on this forum is made by the creator of the website. Almost every single one. None of the other members ever said or did anything. According to Jamie's account, she had made almost 40,000 posts just by herself. All these posts and all of these topics were made by her and her alone. She made dozens and dozens of threads about Buffy stuff and James Marsden replying to herself. All of it was her. Now, if anyone were to stumble upon this board in the middle of the night, they'd probably be a bit freaked out. I would too. And this went on for 6 years, completely unknown to the public. Since no one talked to the board but her, no one knew about it, and no one knew any of this was happening. That was until a Cracked article came out on October 26, 2010, called The 7 Most Unintentionally Creepy Places on the Internet. exposing the bloody boards and its weirdness to the world. The article talks about everything I mentioned and why it's so creepy, and yeah, it is kind of creepy if you were just to stumble upon this one day. This was by far the most well-known part of the article. This article got a lot of traction towards the website. A little too much traction, because it found its way to our good old pals at 4chan and E-Bombs World. Now, of course, being the kind gentlemen souls they are, the people on 4chan and E-Bombs World felt really sorry for her, and they decided they weren't going to let this poor woman post alone anymore. They decided they were going to join the website and give her someone to talk to. For a time, the board was getting thousands of visitors, and people that weren't Jamie were posting. Oh man, that's gotta be a lot of diehard Buffy fans, right? The board was swarmed with nudes, death threats, gore, and all sorts of the degeneracy type. 4chan and E-Bombs World loved their raids, especially back then. They did this shit all the time, like the Harry Potter real-life raids.
Attention shoppers! Voldemort killed Snape!
Anything that will piss people off, they're gonna do it. The creator of the website, of course, very quickly noticed people were actually talking on her forum, but they weren't talking about Buffy. In fact, they were talking about everything but Buffy the Vampire Slayer. This info also got back to the people at Cracked, and the comments of that article that exposed the website turned to chaos. Now people were feeling bad for her because, well, she didn't do anything wrong. She was in her own little world, not harming a fly. Jamie eventually realized she couldn't deal with the raid anymore and decided to shut everything down. The entire website was taken down. It was all gone. And to this day, it's still all gone. There is barely any traces of the website left. The good old scorched earth approach. Jamie would eventually come out on her own personal blog and give an explanation why the website was the way it was. According to her, the board was not meant to be a message board. She was using it to keep up with any news of the Buffy series and cast. That's why there were tons of posts for basically anything relating to Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It was for her and any fans to use it as a way to keep up with any news regarding the series. But I don't think that's the full story. She has enough sense to make an excuse for her actions, but I still think she's got something going on upstairs. Even her own personal blog. She is extremely obsessed with Spike's actor James Marsden. Her blog is filled with stuff about the actor. It comes off as really weird, okay? It comes off as weird. I mean, if you want to keep track of any news about the series or the actors, isn't that what fucking sticky notes were invented for? I have a serious question to ask, though. This board was made in 2004. Buffy the Vampire Slayer as a TV series ended in 2003. This board was made a full year after the show ended. For those 6 years, was there really almost 40,000 posts worth of things and news to post about for a show that wasn't even airing anymore? Were they just having fan meetings and get-togethers left and right? That's my biggest question. This blurb on an old article about this sums it up. She was dedicated to this show and finding every single piece of info she could find about the series. And despite how unhinged she probably is, I don't really think she deserved her forums getting raided and bombarded. I mean, yeah, the whole thing is absolutely crazy, but she wasn't hurting anything. She was in her own little world, having this whole website for herself to keep up with info on a canceled TV show. She wasn't doxing, harassing anyone, just posting shit on her obsession. She still has a live journal up in a Twitter, which she updates to this day. And it's still about James Marsters. Jesus Christ, she's still sipping over this man almost 20 years later. That's dedication. So this whole story started out creepy and just turned out sad. This woman had a website to herself that no one knew about, wasn't hurting anyone, and it all came crumbling down. A little bit of attention to the wrong people is all it takes, I guess. But the most important thing to note is how this website went unnoticed for years. Someone had this under everyone's noses and nobody knew anything about it for the longest time. If a forum with almost 40,000 posts made by one person was that hidden for a while, it only makes you wonder, what else could possibly be out there in the wild west that is the internet?
Hi everyone. Voldemort kills Snape!
Attention shoppers! Voldemort kills Snape! Voldemort kills Harry on page 404, comes back to life and kills Voldemort on page 442. Voldemort kills Snape!
Evoslow.com! Evoslow.com!
Evil!